All right, everybody. I genuinely cannot believe that I am saying this, but for the last what seems like 5 days straight, one of my favorite movies from my childhood, 1997's Starship Troopers by Paul Verhoeven, um, has been the forefront of Twitter discourse between the left and the right, fighting over like whether or not a certain piece of media agrees with their side politically for the last 4 days, like I said. And it's hilarious to me that this movie that to me is just this very fond, cult classic childhood movie of mine that I fondly remember sometimes, haven't seen in over a decade. I see memes about it sometimes, like the I'm doing my part memes and stuff like that. But overall, despite the the large impact of the book that the movie was inspired by, it still very much was a surprise to me to see Starship Troopers, of all things, like almost 30 years old at this point, being the forefront of discourse on Twitter. It's very surreal, is all I can really say. You see, when I was a little lad, I didn't have cable, and I didn't have internet. And by that I mean from the ages of from when I was born, essentially, up until I was maybe 11, I did not have cable or internet. Now, it wasn't because I wasn't allowed it or anything like that. It's just that I was raised by a single mom, and luxuries like that in America, when you're living paycheck to paycheck and trying to raise a child, are just not the kind of thing that you can really afford. And so my sources of entertainment were either reading or my VCR. I had a TV and I had a VCR. And I had a whole lot of VHS tapes that my grandma would get for me at the flea market. And one of those VHS tapes was the movie Starship Troopers. So yes, I saw Starship Troopers for the first time, and many more times from the ages of 6 to I believe 8 or 9 was the last time that I even saw the movie. And I watched it probably 500 times and all of that. Now, Starship Troopers is absolutely a movie that is not appropriate for a 6-year-old, okay? But I'm built different, all right? And before you ask, you already know the answer. Yes, Dizzy's tits were the first tits I ever saw. So, and I know several people in chat said the same when I mentioned that earlier. So, solidarity, brothers. Very special movie to us all. Now, Starship Troopers is a very interesting movie, because there's always been a bit of a small debate online about the politics of the movie. And many of you may be curious why, beyond the simple answer of conservatives lack media analysis skills. You may also be wondering, why are conservatives so bent out of shape specifically on this movie having to not be fascist in their minds? Why do they have to defend that this particular movie, for years and years and years, decades now, specifically is not anti-fascist? Well, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background, a little bit of backstory here, and I'm going to try to make it as brief as I can, and it's going to make a lot of this probably make more sense to you if you're not as tapped into this area of nerd culture as I am, or as many others are. So, hypers in chat, if you have noticed the massively common tendency for conservatives and even full-on neo-Nazis online to heavily LARP and identify with the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40k. And the Space Marines that are in Warhammer. How many of you are familiar with that? Now, Warhammer is a very old property. The concept of the Space Marines from Warhammer, quite old, been around for a while. But do you know what predates the popular among conservatives Warhammer Space Marines? There is a piece of media that is the origin of the phrase Space Marine, as well as the origin of the concept of Space Marines. And that is a book called Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers was a book before it was a movie. And the book is very different from the movie. Very, very different. You see, the book was written by a schizoid conservative. And to give you an idea of how schizoid of a conservative the guy who wrote the book was, there are entire pages of the book that are just dissertations on the evils of Marxism. They use it like there are story explanations for why there is a dissertation on the evils of Marxism, just breaking the pacing right in the middle of the story about killing bugs and shit. But the explanation is like, oh, he has to write a book report and send it to his teacher, and his teacher has to respond, elaborating on the topic of the book report. So you basically just get several points in the book that are just an email chain back and forth between Rico and his teacher about the evils of Marxism, but it's just a mechanism through which the creator of the Starship Troopers book could just add an entire section propagandizing about how evil Marxism and socialism and progressivism are in the middle of the story. Now, even outside of that, the book is filled with highly fascist overtones. For example, the fact that the bugs are constantly compared to leftists, compared to progressives and Marxists. The idea that they are in the book, mind you, the bugs are a hive mind, and they are evil. They are launching meteors at Earth, even though that's not really possible mathematically, and they are trying to destroy humanity. So in the story, humanity and every bad fascist thing that it does is completely justified because the bugs are unambiguously and with no way of reasoning with them or stopping them, an evil hive mind coming to wipe them out. And so the book, Starship Troopers, was the story about a future of humanity in which human society has been taken over by veterans who fought in the military and have decided that only those who have engaged in military service for our society should have a right to determine who runs our society, a sort of controlled democracy of sorts. And from there, a heavy militarization, a glorification of militarization, a dissolving of individuality of the person to just simply be like an ant in a colony fighting for the overall good, what the state tells you is the good of humanity. So much so to the point where what we basically recognize as American imperialism has become so much the status quo, so much the norm, so broadly accepted in this Starship Troopers future that we have done it in space. We have reached the space age now, and we are engaging in space imperialism, engaging in space genocide, wiping out entire species of aliens to take over their planets, take their resources, and dominate them. Like full-on human supremacy. And this is with them usually under the presumption that their values, these values, have won in the short term, in the present, or some time in the short future in these scenarios, where it's like, okay, the fascists win, then we become space fascists and we genocide the aliens, basically. It's sort of like the step-by-step of how humanity got to that point, at least in their minds, and no doubt the author of the Starship Troopers books' minds got to that point. So what you guys fundamentally have to understand is that going back to the origin point of the concept of Space Marines, they have been inexplicably tied into, being anti-leftist. Like, Space Marines, as a concept, are made to be an anti-Marxist, anti-collectivist, anti-progressive, and even outside of the killing bugs and aliens, what's the term for it? Resistance-crushing force. From their very conception, they are meant to be a resistance-crushing force. Very much like how the Spartans were first designed to quell human rebellions in Halo before they were used to fight against the Covenant. Now, from Starship Troopers, the book, we have seen a million things get inspiration. Halo is inspired by the original Starship Troopers book. Warhammer, obviously, inspired by the original Starship Troopers book. Look at pretty much anything that has Space Marines fighting bugs, like even StarCraft, for example. The origin of the concept of Space Marine humans fighting bugs and robots and shit comes from Starship Troopers the book, which is a love letter to fascism, so much that it depicts it having succeeded into the space age and humanity fully accepting it. Now, obviously, this does not mean that Space Marines as a concept are fundamentally an evil, awful thing to enjoy or even meme or LARP about, as long as it's, like, ironic, but I hope that this gives you guys some context on why the concept of Space Marines, and especially Starship Troopers, matters and is so close to the hearts of conservatives. The idea that Starship Troopers was adapted into a movie that stands against everything the book stood for, their worldview, is something they simply cannot accept. However, remember, the goalpost is never what they say it is with these people. They will never be honest about what the goalpost is, and it will constantly move. You will see conservatives that will non-stop say, you're a crazy lefty who just can't enjoy things and stop thinking about how everything's supposed to back up your political views. You're crazy if you think that Starship Troopers is like leftist or anti-fascist. And then you show them a clip of Paul Verhoeven saying it as such in the director's commentary track. And you know what they respond with every time? I've seen this happen about 500 times on Twitter in the last 5 days. Every time they respond with, well, Paul Verhoeven is a woke leftoid. He ruined the original source material. It's like, wait, just a minute ago we were arguing about how it's crazy to, quote-unquote, see this non-existent leftist message in the movie to think that it coincides with our political views. And now that we've proven that it does, and that you are just being a shitter by saying that we're making it up and seeing nothing, now you've moved the goalpost to, I have to defend Paul Verhoeven's adaptation of the original book because the book is different from the movie, but you want to use the book's logic to disprove the movie's moral? Like they'll say, you'll say, yeah, in the movie, it's very clearly stated that the bugs could not have launched the meteor from one side of the Milky Way at Earth. Mathematically not possible if light is the cosmic speed limit. Like, that's not a thing that can happen. And yet we're expected to believe the entire Milky Way galaxy was crossed in, like, a few years after they managed to shoot a meteor out of orbit from an asteroid belt and, like, billiard ball it across the galaxy so it'll hit Buenos Aires. Mind you, most of the Earth is water, so they had to be really, really accurate to hit land where people would be. I don't know, guys. I don't know if, like, it's very clear that in the movie, the bugs were not responsible for the meteor. It's very clear in the movie the bugs are not responsible for the meteor. We never see them hitting meteors out of orbit with their bug blast, their plasma beams. They just hit ships out of orbit, and they don't really do that much damage either. Takes quite a few to take those big destroyers down. Regardless, I'm kind of getting caught up in things here, but you'll point that out, and you'll point out the fact the director himself has said this, and then they respond, but in the book, the bugs did do it, as if that has any bearing on the movie. It's like trying to make a point about the Stanley Kubrick Shining movie. I believe Stanley Kubrick directed the Shining movie. It's like making a claim about the Shining movie and then using the book, which is the only place where said evidence exists, as your argument for why something would be true of the movie, when it is a case of a very explicit adaptation not really matching the source material that closely. And there was a time when that sort of thing was not, like, hated on that much. Like, people did not get all that mad at the time about the Shining book being different, or a movie being different from the book, except for Stephen King. But nowadays, if you make an adaptation that's, like, takes creative liberties from the original source material, that alone loses points for that piece of media with most people, which I think is a little crazy. But why is it right now that this big discourse between the right and the left is happening on Starship Troopers, a 30-year-old movie? Why is that happening? Well, it's because an amazing new game has come out called Helldivers 2. And as amazing as this game is, I would not recommend that you buy it. I have even left a negative review on Steam for it, despite it being one of the best games I've ever played. And that is because, right now, the game is in a functionally unplayable state most of the day because the servers are packed. This is the biggest game on Steam right now, the highest player count game on Steam right now, by a lot. The servers, right now, if I tried to get in, there would probably be like a 30-minute queue just to get in, maybe more. I usually have to get in at like 1 a.m. I stayed up all night playing this shit, okay? It is so fun, and everyone is playing it. And as you can imagine, when people found out that Helldivers is very heavily inspired by Starship Troopers, people started watching it, many of them for the first time, and being completely, for the very first time, exposed to the politics of Starship Troopers. Now, Helldivers, as you are about to see based on the opening cinematic of the game, is very heavily inspired by Starship Troopers, including the fact that it is made by quite progressive left-leaning people who are doing the same, like, heavy parodying of, like, fascist governments, like the satire thing that Starship Troopers does. Only with this game, Helldivers 2, it's way more on the nose, to the point of it being hilarious. Your characters in this game, while like gunning down waves and waves of bugs, will scream, "How do you like the taste of freedom?" They'll scream like, "This is democracy!" Or my favorite line is, "How do you like the taste of liberty?" Amazing fucking lines that your characters will scream while gunning down bugs and socialist robots, as the government calls them. I'm going to show you the opening cinematic of this game. Many of you guys, if you haven't already gotten into it, are going to be quite interested after you see this. It is some of the best political satire in a game that is also just downright amazing and fun to play with friends that I've ever seen. And it is just, if you are a lefty playing this game, you are going to be laughing at the voice lines and the jokes that they have in there constantly, all the time. My ship, do you want to know what my ship is called? The SES Patriot of Family Values is the name of my ship in the game. The SES Patriot of Family Values. The game is so goddamn on the nose with the satire. It's so good. Anyway, behold the opening cinematic of Helldivers 2, the game that has spurned this Starship Troopers sort of discourse on Twitter. Super Earth.
Super Earth, our home. Prosperity. Liberty.
Hi there.
Democracy. Our way of life.
Oh, hello.
But freedom doesn't come free.
No! Sweet liberty! No! Look familiar? Scenes like these are happening all over the galaxy right now. You could be next. That is, unless you make the most important decision of your life. Prove to yourself that you have the strength and the courage to be free.
Join the Helldivers.
Become part of an elite peacekeeping force!
See exotic new life forms.
That's not how I kill those. I kill those with my
And
hell pod.
spread managed democracy throughout the galaxy. Become a hero. Become a legend. Become a Helldiver.
So, this game is obviously very top tier. And like all of the trailers and everything are like very satirical, like propaganda pieces that are ironically very reminiscent of modern day US military recruitment advertisements you see on TV and in ads on YouTube videos and stuff. Like how different is this functionally from like modern military recruitment ads? It's not that different. Can we like put this side by side with like a modern US military recruitment ad? Like we'll play it here. Like, just for, like, I know this is a little bit off topic, but it's also on topic a little bit. Hold on. U.S. military ad. What's that one that's just absolutely insane? Shifting Threats, U.S. Marine Corps commercial. You know what? What better than to feature one that is a commercial for the Marine Corps? Look at this shit and spot the difference. This is a real ad from the official YouTube channel of the fucking U.S. Navy.
The future is threatened by enemies often unrelenting.
This is our military propaganda here.
Unexpected and unpredictable.
Stay alert, Marines.
In the midst of an uncertain and evolving world, the need for Marines to defeat these shifting threats is critical.
We need soldiers! We have the weapons!
Because the
We need
need to ensure
soldiers!
stability for our nation has never been greater.
This is not a joke, guys. This is real. What is this, supposed to be Ukraine? We don't have boots on the ground in Ukraine.
When there are battles to win for America's future, there is one constant. Marines.
Okay, so you have seen what you've seen a average American military recruitment ad. Now, spot the difference, because I'm going to be honest, rewatching this is less cringe. This is actually less cringe.
Prove to yourself that you have the strength and the courage to be free.
Join the
This game's satire is amazing.
Become part of an elite peacekeeping force.
It's the same. It's the same.
See exotic new life forms. And spread managed democracy throughout the galaxy.
So, here's the best part of this game's story. Just like in Starship Troopers, the movie, if you pay attention to the lore, of which there is lore to this game, and it is quite interesting, humans, or at least the Super Earth government that is manipulating the vast majority of the human population, is unambiguously evil and in the wrong. For starters, the bugs, well, they are technically, like, they are effectively just bugs. Like, they are bugs. Like, they spread from planet to planet. They are a pest. You could argue that exterminating the bugs, like, especially when they attack planets that are already, like, inhabited by humans and they're, like, slaughtering people, is justifiable. But you better believe, as we're going down there to save people on these, planets, these colonies that aren't part of the Super Earth government, as we're saving these people, we're also, as we're killing the bugs, we do surveys of their, like, natural gas and their, and like their rare earth metals and stuff they have on the planet. Like, you're fighting bugs, it's like, save these these colonists and get them to the drop ship. But check how much oil is underneath their town as you do so. Put down a survey thing for some extra credit. You know, make sure you find out how much oil is on this planet. You know, we want to find out if we're wasting our time here or not. You know, like that kind of thing. But in reality, the bugs, when we kill them, decompose at a rapid rate into extremely potent and large quantities of fossil fuel, natural gas. Basically, imagine if, like, one bug, like, imagine if the bug was made of plankton and it became that much plankton's worth of oil in like a week. That kind of thing. The bugs are oil. And then on the other front, you fight robots that are basically Terminators. They're called the automatons, and they're invading. And they are invading, to be clear, so they are a threat to humans. But Do you want to know why we're really fighting them? We use the advanced CPUs that are their brains for rigged voting machines. You see, managed democracy is a term that gets thrown around a lot in this game. Managed democracy is the word that they have for their electoral system, which is one in which, when you vote, you go to a computer and you select a bunch of answers from a list of multiple choice questions. You don't select who you want to vote for. You select what policies you like and what values you have based on the multiple, and then based on the multiple choice questions, you, what's the word for it? The AI, an AI program, decides who you voted for. Now, it is very clear, very, 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 very clear that it is a rigged election, that those in power are just lying to the population and saying that, like, this advanced AI knows better than all of us and has removed uncertainty, and that now we have the best way of democracy. We have optimized democracy, but in reality, it's just a smokescreen for maintaining control. It's very obvious. And your character, as well as everybody else, is fully bought into it. And even within the community of Helldivers, the joke is to LARP that you have fully bought into the propaganda, and that if Super Earth propaganda doesn't work on you, you just haven't seen enough of it. A good example of this, and how widespread the popularity of this game has been, have been the memes. And oh boy, have the memes been good. This is one of my favorites. I literally say this to my friends before, like, every round, every game, because of this meme. Cadet, Space Cadet. Each man under my command owes me 100 green samples. And y'all will get me my 100 green samples or you will die trying. Fucking Inglorious Bastards meme. Really good meme. Really good meme. One of my favorites that I saw today on Reddit this morning is this one.
Men with no hose.
This is me.
Where are you?
She's referring to.
What are you doing?
Prove to yourself that you have the strength and the courage to be free.
Join the Helldivers. Become part of an elite peacekeeping force.
This is where the dudes with no hose be at.
Men
However,
with no
even the men who do have hose. Let's just say the dudes with girlfriends, the girlfriends are having to adapt to Helldivers existing now. And, like, women are outright making TikToks with advice for their girlfriends, or for their, like, for girls that have boyfriends that play Helldivers, to help them, like, deal with that. But not in the way you would expect. Just go ahead and check this out.
Wives and girlfriends of Helldiver soldiers. So we need to do our part. I've been taking notes on how we can support the cause, on the language that we need to understand to be part of the lore. This is probably my best one yet. These are things that you can say to your soldier, i.e. Helldiver gamer, in order to engage, strike conversation, and hopefully cause something else to happen. So first of all, of course, above all else, the mission, the war, democracy. So before they start playing, because nothing's going to happen if they need to, serve, do their duty for that day. So before they go to their daily duty, saying things like the only good bug is a dead one. That's a big one. If they're like, oh honey, like, can I get on? Like, I gotta go fight. Yeah. Like, I'm doing my part. You go do yours. It's going to hit different. And then if you really want to get in there, the boys need you in the field. Democracy doesn't sleep. Like, just really hit them hard. Now, these you're going to use after, because if they have the desired effect, you can't distract them from the cause. So the automatons, I always have trouble with that. The automatons never stood a chance against you. Next, another hard day in the name of freedom. You understand what he's going through, and finally salute him and say, I must join the cause. I'm not going to say what type of desired effect that has. There's a couple different routes that this can go. You may be enlisted to game. You may be enlisted to do something else. I'm just here to help.
Such a good fucking meme. The memes about this game have been very top tier. But, as you can imagine, the main point of this has been the Starship Troopers discourse, which, of course, the right has been constantly dumbfuck posting about nonstop. just nonstop. My favorite example of it has to be the consistent self-reporting of the fascistic ideologies of conservatives that have been commenting on this. My favorite has to be this one. The Starship Troopers discourse is always great because leftists inevitably end up identifying with hideous, murderous hive insects while passionately rejecting everything that is beautiful and heroic. Now, I'm going to go ahead and talk about why everything about this tweet and this screenshot is stupid and wrong if you have any fundamental understanding of the movie, or especially if you've heard anything that the director of the movie himself has said. So, this scene right here is from the end of the movie. And big spoiler alerts, if you haven't seen Starship Troopers yet, for God's sakes, get the fuck out, pause this video, go watch it before I spoil it just now, and come back, because you do not want to ruin this movie for yourself. It is just a movie you have to see. Go watch it. It is on AMC+. You can pirate it too, honestly, if you want to, but I don't know. Find a way to watch it. I think you can get it on YouTube too if you pay for it for a rental, a $3 rental or something. I think you can also buy it on YouTube. I don't even know. But if you look here, this scene is from the very end of the movie when they've killed the brain, well, not killed, but captured the brain bug. Victory for humanity is implied on a surface level, to be assured. And it seems like we've had a pretty happy ending. What Helldivers would call a mournful victory. In reality, it is the saddest ending you could possibly imagine, besides all the characters dying. Horrifically. It is the second saddest ending you could possibly get for this movie. You see, Dizzy, the girl who from the very start of the movie is established to be hopelessly head over heels in love with Rico, the main character, who himself can't recognize the fact that there is somebody who cares about him so much and constantly friend zones her and puts her off because he's currently dating Carmen, who is, let's be honest, prettier than Dizzy, and so he seems to have that kind of going for him there. He's not recognizing that, somebody who clearly doesn't care about him as much as he deserves, he's with, when he's got somebody who cares about him far more right there, but he seems to just be kind of, I guess, hooked on her looks, right? And the movie confirms this multiple times when, everybody comments on Carmen's looks. Nobody comments on Dizzy's looks. Nobody, points out how pretty Dizzy is. And I'm not saying she's not pretty. She is. But the movie explicitly never has anybody saying she's pretty, while everybody comments on how pretty Carmen is. That, to me, indicates that Rico was dating Carmen because he liked how attractive she is. Despite the fact that very early in the movie, Carmen is established to be an extremely unfaithful and arguably uncaring bad girlfriend. For one, there's the obvious. She breaks up with him right away. Just right away. The second they're separated. And she goes to flight school and he's in the Space Marines. Just right away, she breaks up with him. But even before she broke up with him, she was eye-fucking the shit out of the guy that she broke up with him for. And I mean, honestly, I believe the quote from my friends who had never seen Starship Troopers as of a couple days ago, so I quickly changed that. The quote from my friend who had seen the movie for, I showed the movie to for the very first time, Xander, but with a Z. He said, "Man, he was an asshole for cucking bro, but he didn't deserve to die like that. He wasn't a coward or anything like that. He wasn't an asshole." I was just yeah, I don't know if he deserved to get brains sucked, but I didn't like him very much. But also, did he really do anything that wrong? At the end of the day, I think it was actually Carmen who was more in the wrong. Regardless, though, Dizzy, shortly after Rico breaks up with Carmen, or Carmen breaks up with Rico, and then Rico ends up with Dizzy, Dizzy dies. She gets killed by an arachnid and dies in Rico's arms, but she dies happy, saying, "It was worth it because I got to be with you." Her last words were that it was all worth it. Joining the fucking military for him and dying a horrible death was worth it because for a night she got to be with him. She's dead. Rico's parents die. Rico's teacher, who ends up being the leader, Radchak, the leader of Rico's Roughnecks, fucking dies. Everybody who truly, truly was good for him in his life and truly was there for him and cared for him and would be there for him is dead. Carmen is the worst girlfriend you could possibly expect coming out of this situation. Like, he lost by ending up with Carmen. She literally left him, fucked another guy, he died, and then she got back with him because the guy that she left him for is dead. And that's the only reason. His best friend, Neil Patrick Harris here, who's a psychic, went full fucking megalomaniac to the point where he outright says to Rico, I send hundreds of people like you to their deaths every day, and there will be more coming for you. I will be doing the same to you. You better get used to it. And Rico, the only reason why they continue to be friends and he's not framed as a villain, like in the way that conservatives would be able to clearly tell, is because Rico accepts it. Rico at this point is fully accepted becoming a faceless, nameless member of the Hive. That's the reality of it. The movie basically frames the humans as not being that different from the bugs, because even if the bugs are Hive insects, at this point, so are the humans. By the end, all three of them have lost their individuality. They're not all particularly great people, and they're all just part of this massive Hive force that's just fighting to exterminate each other. Both of them are just the same thing. Hive forces just trying to exterminate each other for supremacy. At least that's the argument that you could have on a surface level, but the fact is, there's so much evidence that shows the bugs might literally just be intelligent animals being exterminated with no provocation. Down to, if you pay attention, in every early interaction with the bugs at the beginning of the movie, the humans always shoot first. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but like, especially in the first interaction, the night battle on the planet, the humans always shoot first. The first two interactions on that night planet, the bug stops and like backs up a little bit, and the humans freak out and start unloading their rifles on the bugs, and then the bugs start fighting back because they're getting shot. And at that point, tons of bugs show up to start fighting, as if humans showed up, they started like, they had time to unload their ships and form up a squadron and explore around for a minute. And then the second they started shooting and killing a bug, that's when everyone's like, okay, holy shit, we need to do something about this. And then a battle started. And the Mormons were the ones to first show up as well and start colonizing the bug planets. And they were hostile as well, and they got wiped out for it. The evidence of the movie, as well as the director's commentary, is clear. But what I find most interesting about this quote is that the Starship Troopers discourse is great because leftists invariably end up identifying with hideous, murderous Hive insects. Basically, the implication of this is sort of this, man, isn't it great that the leftists are describing themselves as bugs that need to be exterminated themselves instead of us having to do it? A fundamental aspect of conservative, like far-right ideology is the idea that leftists are cockroaches. Our enemies are vermin that need to be exterminated, right? The same is the more, on the nose that like they just make that literal for Starship Troopers and see how well the propaganda does. And so it's interesting that they just outright admit, I love that leftists are calling themselves vermin that need to be exterminated, so we don't have to be the ones saying the quiet part out loud. That's what this tweet is actually saying. So what I love about this discourse, I'll say, is that it ends up making these people defend fascism in the real world and in a fictional one, just so that they can argue an insane point that the director of the movie that they're, like, arguing about doesn't even agree with them on. We live in strange times, but man, if it's an excuse to talk about Starship Troopers and Helldivers, then I suppose the discourse can, gets my blessing. It's been fun to talk about and argue with people about it, but I think it's also worth noting as well that a fair amount of the conservative LARP around Warhammer Space Marines and like Starship Troopers and stuff, a lot of them are being like pseudo-ironic. Like they're doing it for fun, and they're being ironic, but they're being ironic in a way where it's almost passing the bar of not even being irony anymore, you know? A fair amount of them aren't serious about, like, yes, I think humans should exterminate all aliens in the future if we get to this point in human development often into the distant future. A lot of them are just memeing, and they're, like, LARPing online, one of their, like, hyper fixations or their interests. But a fair amount of them are using rhetoric that pertains to a fictional world to dog whistle their policies and values that apply to the real world. And that is what I really want to talk about here. And I hope that my deep research and knowledge about Starship Troopers, Space Marines, and the conservative politics that have kind of become embedded in them from the start help give you guys some context on why the right has been arguing this the way they have been, and why they've been arguing it so strongly and so passionately.